All right, ready to dive in? Today we are tackling The Poisoned Well of Erithma, a story, by the way, that you specifically chose for us.
Excellent choice.
And I know, at first glance, poisoned wells, kind of classic fairy tale stuff, right?
Right.
But trust me on this, there is a reason this story, it resonates, And we are going to unpack all of that, all those hidden depths together.
What I find so clever about The Poisoned Well of Erithma is how it takes those familiar fairy tale elements and uses them to explore, well, some surprisingly complex themes. We were talking greed, we're talking about environmental responsibility, even the interconnectedness of, well, everything.
Yeah.
And it all circles back really to that title, The Poisoned Well. It's more than just, a catchy phrase. It's a symbol, a powerful one.
Okay, so break it down for us then. What is it about a poisoned well that makes it such potent symbolism?
Well, throughout literature, symbols you see are frequently used to represent abstract ideas. They add layers to the meaning that you don't get just reading the surface.
Right.
And a poisoned well in this case, well, it instantly brings to mind this idea of corruption, right?
Yeah.
But it's not just the water itself. It's something much more insidious, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely.
It suggests that there's a sickness, something rotten at the core of something vital.
And that brings us right to the center of the story itself. I mean, we're barely a page in before we meet the good doctor.
Dr. Malachar.
Dr. Malachar, yes. And the author does not hold back on his descriptions. Crooked nose, that sparkling white robe. I'm not going to lie, when I first read it, I thought, okay, yeah, this guy, he's bad news. It felt a little on the nose,
And yet, that is precisely why it is so effective.
Yeah.
You see, in literature, physical descriptions, they are rarely arbitrary. They're visual cues, really, often hinting at a character's true nature. And with Malachar, well, his description is, it's almost a masterclass in symbolism.
So it's more than just crooked nose equals bad guy.
Precisely. Consider the connotations, though, of a crooked nose, dishonesty, deceit. And then we juxtapose that with that image of the white robe. I mean, that's traditionally symbolic, wouldn't you say, of purity, healing? Yeah. It creates a tension, an immediate tension, like things are not as they appear, which, isn't exactly a new concept in fairy tales.
Right.
But it's effective.
Yeah, it's like that friend, the one who's always dressed to the nines, but then you find out they've been, gossiping about you behind your back. And it's like the contrast is almost comical, but also a little unsettling, And that is Dr. Malachar to a T.
Exactly. And that theme of contrast, of outward appearances versus, well, hidden realities, it becomes even more prominent, I think, when you look at the stark difference between Erithma's pure water and the polluted state of Akrime, that neighboring town.
That really jumped out at me, too, that detail about the water. Because, it's not just about, having clean water to drink, is it? It felt symbolic, like there was a significance to Erithma's pure water source being threatened by this external force.
Absolutely. See, water throughout literature and mythology even, it's often associated with life, with purity, with community. So when Malachar poisons the well, he's not just, contaminating their water supply. He's attacking, in a sense, the very essence of their community, their livelihood, everything they depend on to thrive.
It's interesting, too, because water, especially I think in the context of a well, carries this sense of shared resources of communal dependence. It makes the act of poisoning it, even more insidious.
Yes, and I think that's the point.
Yeah.
And it's not just a metaphorical attack either. I mean, you can look at real-world examples, the Flint water crisis, for instance.
Yeah.
That contamination, that wasn't just an environmental disaster. It was a social justice issue, if you really think about it. It's a very real illustration of just how interconnected our health and well-being are with the environment.
It's true. And in the story, that connection between the health of the community and the state of their environment, it becomes even more, explicit when the river, their source of water, it seemingly comes alive. The author describes it as churning with anger. Gave me chills, honestly, when I got to that part. It's like nature itself is rising up in protest.
It is a powerful image, you're right. And it really speaks to this theme we see again and again in stories like this. Mm-hmm. The idea that nature, it isn't just a passive backdrop. It's an active force.
Right.
It can heal, but it can also, retaliate.
Malachar definitely underestimated that, I think. The whole, interconnectedness of it all. Like, he could just poison a well and there wouldn't be any consequences.
Yes, but nature, in this story especially, well, it bites back.
Yeah, it's like that saying, don't bite the hand that feeds you, but in this case, it's more like don't go poisoning the water you drink.
Yes. And the consequences of his actions, they aren't just visited on the environment either. They come back to him directly. Which brings us, I think, to his downfall, which, if you remember, is a pretty vivid example of poetic justice.
You know, I have to admit, I was so caught up in the imagery of it all, his pristine white robe getting stained and ruined and all that, that I almost didn't even, register the poetic justice of it all. But yeah, now that you mention it, it's like the very thing he was trying to control, the water, it's what undoes him in the end.
It's a classic element in storytelling, you're right. Well, it underscores this idea of moral consequence.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting here the way it plays out. Because it isn't just that Malachar gets punished. It's that he is consumed by the very thing he was trying to, to manipulate. The water itself.
Right.
It's ironic, tragic, and honestly kind of unsettling all at the same time.
It's giving, like Greek myth. You know how those kings are always trying to cheat fate, overstep their bounds, and the gods have to put them in their place. And it always happens in a way that's almost poetically fitting. It makes you think twice about, tempting fate or I guess poisoning wells.
Right. But the poisoned well, it doesn't just punish the bad guy and then end. I mean, think about the villagers. Even though they suffers because of his actions, they never just give up. There's this incredible sense of resilience, of community that really shines through, even when things are at their worst.
Now that you mention it, I remember thinking that how much I liked the ending. It would have been really easy to just, leave the villagers in that state of fear and desperation. But there's that glimmer of hope. They clean the well, rebuild their lives. They move forward.
It's subtle, but it's definitely there. And honestly, I think that's part of why this story, it sticks with you. It's a good reminder that even when things are hard, maybe even when they seem the absolute bleakest, there's always the possibility of healing, of renewal, of finding that strength to move forward.
And that theme, the resilience part, this community coming together to overcome this shared threat, it feels, kind of relevant even today. I mean, think about everything we're facing globally, locally, even personally. It feels like a lot of the time we're surrounded by all these metaphorical poisoned wells.
Oh, absolutely. And just like those villagers, how they had to come together to heal their community and their environment, we have to remember that we aren't isolated. We are all part of this larger system. And what happens to one, well, it affects us all.
It's true, though, isn't it? It kind of makes you think about that question we asked at the beginning. If water, if that represents life, community, what are those poisonous forces that could be threatening our communities even today? What's the modern day equivalent of, Malachar's toxic brew? What would you say?
It's a question that, stays with you, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And yeah, there are some obvious parallels to real literal pollution and all that. But I think the real beauty of a story like this, it's in how open-ended it is. It lets us, kind of forces us even to really examine those less visible toxins. You know what I mean? Like apathy, the things that divide us, misinformation even, anything that can poison us without us even realizing it. And just like those villagers, how they had to band together to heal, everything, we have to do the same. We have to be aware of what sustains us. And I don't just mean physically, right? But protect it too.
It's a good point to end on, I think. The poisoned well of Erithma, it reminds us that even in a story, a fairy tale even, there's a depth there,
You're right.
A wisdom that's worth digging for.
Yeah.
And maybe, just maybe, the most important lessons, the ones that really stick with you, those are the ones that come from the most unexpected places. So until next time, keep exploring those hidden depths. And as always, thanks for diving in with us.
Did you like this story? Comment your favorite part down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and poison the notification bell.